The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, crackling through subspace frequencies that Earth's finest scientists barely understood. Ambassador Lyra Okafor stood in the communications center of Luna Station, watching holographic symbols dance across the translucent display, each character more alien than the last, yet somehow beautiful in their incomprehensible complexity. "Greeting, species designation human," the translated voice echoed through the chamber, synthesized yet carrying an unmistakable weight of authority. "You have been selected to participate in the 87th Galactic Trials. Attendance is mandatory." The word mandatory hung in the recycled air like a death sentence. Dr. James Blackwood, Earth's leading xenolinguist, stepped closer to the display, his weathered face etched with concern. "Lyra, we need to understand what we're dealing with. This isn't a request, it's a summons." Across the galaxy in the crystalline spires of the Zeftari homeworld, High Arbiter Mukhtarn observed the transmission logs with what his species might have called amusement. If they possessed such a primitive emotion, his six-armed form moved with fluid grace between the neural interface pods, each gesture deliberate and calculated. "The humans have received their invitation," he reported to the Council of Arbiters, his voice a harmonic blend of frequencies that vibrated through the chamber's living walls. "Phase 1 of the humiliation protocol is complete." Elder Vashonir, ancient even by Zeftari standards, pulsed with disapproval. Her translucent flesh shifted from deep purple to amber, a display of skepticism that needed no translation. "You place too much faith in this plan, Mokitharn. These humans, they are from a death world. They may prove more resilient than anticipated." Mokhtarn's primary arms gestured dismissively. "Resilience means nothing in the face of superior intellect and technology. The humans are barbarians who have barely achieved faster-than-light travel. They will be broken within the first trial, and their humiliation will serve as an example to any other primitive species that might dare to challenge our authority." The Galactic Trials were not, as their name suggested, a competition. They were an execution, a systematic dismantling of species deemed unworthy by the galactic community. For over 3 millennia, the trials had served as the ultimate filter, separating the civilized from the savage, the enlightened from the barbaric. No species had ever passed all 7 trials. Most barely survived the first. Back on Luna Station, Ambassador Okafor convened an emergency session with Earth's finest minds. The chamber filled with holographic projections of world leaders, scientists, and military commanders. A desperate gathering of humanity's best hope for understanding what they faced. "The transmission included coordinates," reported Admiral Patricia Kane, her stern expression reflected in the polished surface of the conference table. "Deep space, approximately 47 light-years from Earth. They expect us there in 6 months. 6 months to prepare for something we don't understand," muttered Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Earth's foremost expert in alien psychology. "We don't even know what these trials entail." "We know enough," Dr. Blackwood interjected, pulling up a holographic display of alien text, cross-referencing with our limited xenological databases. "I've identified several concerning patterns. The word they use for trials also translates to judgment, or cleansing. This isn't a test, it's a sentence." The room fell silent, save for the gentle hum of life support systems. "Then we need representatives," Ambassador Okafor declared, her voice cutting through the tension. "The best of humanity. If we're going to face judgment, we face it with our finest." "I volunteer," Dr. Blackwood said immediately. "As do I," Admiral Kane added, her military bearing unwavering. "And I," came the voice of Dr. Yuki Tanaka from the Tokyo feed, the brilliant physicist who had helped develop humanity's first successful FTL drive. One by one, volunteers emerged from across the globe. Scientists, soldiers, artists, philosophers, each willing to represent their species in whatever lay ahead. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, construction proceeded on the trial complex. A massive structure spanning hundreds of kilometers, its bioengineered corridors designed to test every conceivable aspect of a species' capabilities. The Zeftari had overseen its construction with meticulous care, ensuring each trial would push participants beyond their breaking point. Overseer Kriminyath, whose primary responsibility was trial calibration, reviewed the human psychological profiles with what passed for satisfaction among his kind. Their stress responses are fascinating, he reported to Mach. They exhibit an unusual tendency towards self-sacrifice for group survival. This trait will be easily exploited in Trial 4, and their technological capabilities. Muktan inquired. Primitive. Chemical propulsion, basic energy weapons, rudimentary artificial intelligence. They've achieved FTL through what appears to be accidental discovery rather than true understanding. Their mathematics are adequate, but lack the elegance of truly advanced species. Perfect. Mokhtar's harmonic voice carried notes of satisfaction. They will provide an excellent demonstration of why genetic cleansing protocols exist. On Earth, the selection process for humanity's representatives consumed the remaining months. Each candidate underwent rigorous testing, physical, mental, and psychological evaluations designed to identify those most likely to survive whatever awaited them. Dr. Blackwood found himself paired with Captain Alex Rivera, a decorated space marine whose calm demeanor masked a tactical brilliance that had earned him legend status among Earth's military forces. Their psychological compatibility ratings were off the charts, a necessity the selection committee insisted, for whatever lay ahead. Dr. Tanaka worked alongside Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, a brilliant biomechanical engineer whose innovations in adaptive technology had revolutionized medical care across the solar system. Their combined expertise in physics and biological systems created a formidable team. Admiral Kane partnered with Dr. David Chen, a xenobiologist whose theoretical work on alien lifeforms had prepared him for contact scenarios that most of humanity couldn't even imagine. Their partnership represented the perfect fusion of military strategy and scientific understanding. As the departure date approached, families gathered to say goodbye to their representatives. The weight of an entire species' future rested on 12 individuals who would board humanity's most advanced vessel, the UES Defiance, and travel to meet their judges. The night before departure, Dr. Blackwood stood on the observation deck of Luna Station, gazing out at the starfield that had once represented infinite possibility. Now it seemed filled with judgment and potential doom. Having second thoughts? Captain Rivera joined him at the viewport, his reflection ghost-like in the reinforced glass. Every moment, Blackwood admitted. We're flying blind into something that could end our species. The translations are incomplete, the cultural context is non-existent, and we have no idea what we're truly facing. But we're going anyway, Rivera observed, because someone has to, because humanity deserves a chance to prove itself, even if we don't know what we're proving. The captain nodded slowly. In the Marines, we have a saying, adapt and overcome. It doesn't matter what the enemy throws at you, you find a way through, or you die trying. And if death is the only option. Rivera's smile was grim but determined. Then we make sure they remember us. Across the galaxy, final preparations were underway at the trial complex. Species representatives from across known space gathered to witness humanity's humiliation, a ritualistic demonstration of galactic superiority that reinforced the existing order. The Velnash delegation arrived in ships that seemed to bend light around them, their crystalline forms radiating an otherworldly beauty that marked them as one of the galaxy's oldest species. The Krandol came next, their massive vessels bristling with weapons that could crack planets, their warrior culture having earned them respect through conquest. Each species brought their own particular expertise to observe the trials. The Velnash would analyze humanity's creative and philosophical responses. The Krintal would evaluate their combat capabilities. The Yundar Collective would assess their technological adaptability, all expected to witness a swift and decisive humiliation. High Arbiter Mukantharn reviewed the trial sequences one final time, ensuring each test would systematically destroy human confidence while demonstrating their fundamental inadequacy. Trial 1 would test raw intelligence through mathematical and logical challenges that had stumped species with thousand-year head starts on human development. Trial 2 would evaluate technological adaptation under extreme stress. Trial 3 would examine their capacity for leadership and cooperation under impossible circumstances. The remaining trials became progressively more brutal, designed to break not just individual will but species-wide hope. Everything is prepared, Overseer Krimanath reported. The humans will arrive within the next solar cycle. Good, Mockthorne replied, his harmonic voice carrying notes of anticipation. Let us begin this lesson in humility. The UES Defiance slipped through hyperspace like a silver needle through dark fabric, carrying humanity's representatives toward their destiny. The ship's advanced AI systems monitored their passengers' vital signs, noting elevated stress markers across all 12 individuals. A perfectly normal response to approaching the unknown. Dr. Blackwood spent the final hours of their journey reviewing everything humanity knew about galactic civilization, which amounted to frustratingly little. First contact had occurred only 18 months ago, when a Zephiri survey vessel had detected Earth's radio transmissions and made formal introduction. The cultural exchange that followed had been limited and carefully controlled, revealing little about galactic society beyond its technological superiority. We're dropping out of hyperspace, Captain Rivera announced from the bridge. You might want to see this. The viewports revealed a sight that defied comprehension. The trial complex stretched across space like a living mountain, its bioengineered surfaces pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. Docking bays lined its hull like glowing caves, each one large enough to accommodate vessels 100 times the size of the Defiance. But it was the sheer scale that struck them speechless. The structure was larger than Earth's moon, its complexity suggesting engineering capabilities that humanity was centuries from achieving. "Dear God," whispered Dr. Tanaka, her face pressed against the viewport. "How do we compete with this?" "We don't compete," Dr. Blackwood replied quietly. "We survive." The Defiance's communication systems crackled to life as docking instructions arrived in perfectly translated English. A small mercy that felt somehow ominous. The alien voices guided them toward a docking bay that glowed with welcoming light, though nothing about this felt welcoming. As the ship's docking clamps engaged with alien machinery, the 12 representatives of humanity prepared to face judgment. They gathered in the airlock, each carrying only essential equipment and the weight of their species' future. The airlock cycled open, revealing a corridor that seemed to extend infinitely into the complex's depths. Bioluminescent panels provided gentle illumination, while the walls themselves seemed to pulse with life. The air that flowed in was breathable but carried scents that were utterly alien. Ozone and something like cinnamon mixed with undertones that human olfactory systems couldn't quite process. "Welcome, humans," came a voice from speakers integrated seamlessly into the living walls. "You will be escorted to your preparation chambers. Trial 1 begins in 6 hours." As they walked deeper into the complex, none of the human representatives could shake the feeling that they were walking into the belly of some vast, patient predator. The corridors seemed to watch them with countless unseen eyes, and the gentle pulsing of the walls felt uncomfortably like a heartbeat. Behind them, the docking bay sealed shut with organic efficiency. There would be no retreat, no escape, no second chances. The trials had begun. The preparation chambers were marvels of bioengineering living spaces that adapted to their occupants' physiological needs with unsettling precision. As Dr. Blackwood entered his assigned quarters, the walls shifted from translucent blue to a warm amber, responding to his elevated stress patterns. The air composition adjusted subtly, providing optimal oxygen levels for human metabolism. "Your species demonstrates interesting biochemical markers," observed the chamber's AI, its voice emanating from the walls themselves. "Fear, determination, curiosity, all in equal measure. Most species exhibit pure terror by this stage." Captain Rivera's voice crackled through the communication system that linked all 12 preparation chambers. "Everyone report in. Let's make sure we're all still breathing." One by one, the human representatives confirmed their status. Dr. Tanaka reported that her chamber had produced a perfect replica of green tea, somehow analyzing her preferences from minute pheromone traces. Dr. Udwan-Konkwo found that her quarters had configured themselves into an exact duplicate of her laboratory back on Earth, complete with holographic recreations of her research notes. "They're studying us." Admiral Kane's voice carried a note of warning. "Every response, every preference, every unconscious reaction. This isn't hospitality, it's reconnaissance." In the observation decks above, representatives from dozens of galactic species gathered to witness humanity's inevitable humiliation. The Velnash delegation floated in their crystalline shells, their internal light patterns flickering with what passed for anticipation among their kind. The Krentol warrior caste maintained their traditional formation, massive forms radiating barely contained aggression even in this neutral space. High Arbiter Mukatharn addressed the assembled witnesses, his harmonic voice resonating through the chamber's acoustic systems. Fellow beings of the galaxy, today we demonstrate once again why the trials exist. These humans represent everything primitive about emerging species: violence, irrationality, technological barbarism. Their planet is classified as a death world, added Elder Vashner, though her tone carried notes of caution. Such environments tend to produce resilient specimen. Resilience without wisdom is merely prolonged suffering, Mukatharn replied dismissively. They will break as all primitive species do. The only question is how quickly. Trial 1 commenced precisely 6 hours after the humans' arrival. The 12 representatives found themselves transported via biomechanical lift to a vast spherical chamber where the laws of gravity seemed to function in multiple directions simultaneously. Floating platforms of living crystal formed and dissolved around them, creating an ever-shifting maze of mathematical possibilities. "Welcome to the Cognitive Convergence Trial," announced Overseer Kriminath, his form visible on screens throughout the chamber. "You will solve 17 multidimensional mathematical theorems while navigating a gravitationally unstable environment. The time limit is 1 standard galactic hour." Dr. Tanaka immediately recognized the challenge's complexity. "These aren't just mathematical problems," she whispered to Dr. Blackwood. "They're testing our ability to think in non-linear dimensional space while under physical stress." The first theorem appeared as a holographic construct floating before them, a mathematical sculpture that existed in at least 7 dimensions. Its equations visible only when viewed from specific angles while moving through the chamber's shifting gravitational fields. What the observing species didn't know was that humanity had evolved under conditions that made this challenge almost familiar. Earth's complex gravitational interactions with its moon, the survival pressures of a death world, and the 3-dimensional thinking required for early space travel had prepared them in ways no one anticipated. Captain Rivera found his military training adapting perfectly to the multidirectional gravity. "Think of it as zero-G combat maneuvering," he called out to his teammates. "Use the gravitational shifts to your advantage." Dr. Okonkwo's biomechanical expertise allowed her to understand how the chamber's living systems created their gravitational effects. "The platforms respond to neural activity," she discovered. "They're reading our brainwaves and adjusting accordingly." Working together, the humans began solving the theorems at a pace that stunned their observers. Dr. Blackwood's linguistic abilities allowed him to recognize mathematical relationships that existed in alien conceptual frameworks. Tanaka's physics background let her navigate the dimensional complexities with growing confidence. Most shocking of all, they began to enjoy it. "This is incredible," Dr. Chen called out as he manipulated a 7-dimensional construct with movements that seemed to defy physics. "It's like sculpting with mathematics." In the observation deck, silence fell among the witness species. The Velanash light patterns shifted to deeper frequencies, confusion mixed with something approaching concern. The Kryntal warriors stirred restlessly, their weapon hands twitching with nervous energy. "They're solving the theorems faster than the Yundar Collective did during their trials," reported a technician whose name translated roughly to data synthesizer. High Arbiter Mukatharn's harmonic voice carried discordant notes. "Impossible. Run diagnostics on the chamber systems." "All systems functioning within normal parameters," came the reply. "The humans are simply performing beyond projected capabilities." The humans completed Trial 1 in 43 minutes, 17 minutes ahead of schedule, and with a problem-solving approach that demonstrated not just intelligence but creative thinking that impressed even their harshest critics. "Beginner's luck," Mukatharn declared, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Trial 2 will prove their limitations." Trial 2. Technological synthesis. The humans found themselves in a vast workshop filled with components from technologies spanning dozens of species and thousands of years of development. Their task: create a functioning device capable of harmonizing 7 different energy frequencies, while withstanding exposure to a simulated stellar core. "The components are deliberately incompatible," explained Overseer Kriminath. "No single species technology can solve this challenge." Most participants spend hours trying to force integration before admitting defeat. What the overseers didn't account for was humanity's unique technological evolution. Earth's diverse ecosystems had forced human technology to adapt to extreme variations in environment, materials, and conditions. Unlike species that developed in more stable environments, humans had learned to make incompatible systems work together through creative engineering and adaptive thinking. Dr. Okonkwo immediately began cataloging the available components. Her biomechanical expertise, allowing her to see biological analogies in even the most advanced alien technologies. "Look at this Velnash quantum resonator," she called to Dr. Tanaka. "It functions like a neural synapse, but with energy instead of chemical signals. And this Krintol power coupling," Dr. Tanaka replied, studying the massive device with growing excitement. "It's built like a hydraulic muscle. It contracts and expands to regulate energy flow." Working with the systematic approach that had carried humanity from stone tools to interstellar travel, they began combining technologies in ways that their original creators had never imagined. Captain Rivera's tactical mind identified the most efficient assembly patterns, while Dr. Chan's xenobiology background helped him understand how alien technologies might interface with each other. The breakthrough came when Dr. Blackwood realized that the various technological languages shared linguistic patterns with their creators' communication systems. "Each technology carries the cultural fingerprint of its makers," he explained rapidly. "If we can understand how these species think, we can predict how their technologies will interact." Within 2 hours, they had created a device that not only met the trial requirements but exceeded them by orders of magnitude. The harmonized energy frequencies produced patterns of such complexity and beauty that several observer species began recording them for further study. "This is impossible." Moktatharn's harmonic voice had shifted to frequencies that indicated genuine distress. "Run complete diagnostics on all systems. There must be an error." "No errors detected," reported the technicians. "The humans have successfully integrated technologies from 7 different species into a single functional device. The energy harmonization patterns are elegant." Elder Vashonier's translucent form had shifted to colors that indicated deep thought. "Perhaps we underestimated these humans. One species' technology borrows from another," Moktharn replied, though his conviction was weakening. "They must have encountered these systems before. Their first contact with galactic civilization occurred 18 months ago," Vashonier reminded him. "They have had no exposure to these technologies." Trial 3. Leadership under impossible circumstances. The humans found themselves separated into 3 groups of 4, each placed in a different crisis scenario. Group 1 faced a collapsing space station with only minutes to evacuate thousands of civilians. Group 2 commanded a fleet defense against overwhelming enemy forces. Group 3 managed a plague outbreak on a colony world with limited medical resources. The twist: each group's success required coordination with the others, but communication was limited to brief, encrypted messages that could be intercepted and blocked by the trial systems. Most species approached these trials as individual challenges, with each group focusing on their specific scenario. But humanity had evolved as pack hunters, tribal societies, and eventually as a globally interconnected civilization. Cooperation under stress wasn't just a skill, it was their defining characteristic. Admiral Kane immediately recognized the meta-challenge. "This isn't 3 separate trials," she realized, broadcasting to the other groups despite the communication restrictions. "It's one trial testing our ability to function as a unified species under stress." The humans began using every form of indirect communication they could devise. Dr. Blackwood employed linguistic patterns that carried multiple layers of meaning. Captain Rivera used tactical formations that spelled out messages when viewed from above. Dr. Tanaka manipulated energy signatures to create communication channels the observers didn't recognize. What emerged was a performance that redefined the observer's understanding of coordinated action. The 3 groups didn't just solve their individual scenarios. They transformed them into components of a larger strategy that demonstrated organizational thinking on a scale that most galactic species had never encountered. "They're treating the 3 scenarios as subsystems of a single organism," observed a Yondar collective member, their insectoid form vibrating with what passed for amazement among their kind. Each group anticipates the other's needs and adjusts accordingly. In the observation deck, a profound silence had fallen. The Vulnash light patterns had shifted to frequencies associated with reverence. The Krintol warriors showed signs of respect that their species typically reserved for worthy opponents. High Arbiter Moktharn watched the displays with growing alarm. The humans weren't just passing the trials, they were exceeding performance standards that had stood for millennia. "Initiate Trial 4 immediately," he commanded. "Skip the rest period." "Sir," the technician hesitated. "Trial 4 is designed to break species psychologically, without adequate recovery time." "Now," Moktharn's harmonic voice shattered several crystalline components in the observation deck. Trial 4. The Sacrifice Protocol. Each human was presented with an impossible choice: save their teammates' lives by accepting certain death, or preserve themselves while watching others suffer. The scenarios were crafted to prey on species' survival instincts, forcing them to choose self-preservation over group loyalty. What the trial designers hadn't anticipated was that humans had evolved in an environment where individual survival often required group sacrifice, and group survival sometimes demanded individual sacrifice. They had been making these calculations for hundreds of thousands of years. One by one, every human representative chose sacrifice over survival. Not only that, they did it willingly, even eagerly. "This is Dr. Chen," came a calm voice over the communications system. "I've analyzed the toxic exposure scenario, and I can absorb enough radiation to clear a path for the others. Beginning exposure sequence now. Captain Rivera here. The structural collapse will stop if someone maintains pressure on the manual override. I'm in position and holding." Dr. Okonkwo speaking. "The biological weapon can be neutralized, but it requires direct contact. I'm activating containment protocols now." The observers watched in stunned silence as every human representative faced their scenario's impossible choice and chose death for themselves to save others without hesitation, without regret, without even considering alternatives. But then something unprecedented happened. The trial scenarios, designed to end with the participants' sacrifice, began adapting. The humans' willingness to die for each other had created a variable the systems couldn't process. In trying to save their teammates, they had discovered solutions that the trial designers had never considered. Dr. Chen's radiation absorption created a resonance frequency that neutralized the toxic environment. Captain Rivera's pressure maintenance triggered a structural reinforcement system that stabilized the entire facility. Dr. Kakwa's biological containment didn't destroy her. It integrated her immune system with the weapon's components, creating an antidote. One by one, scenarios designed to force fatal choices began producing unexpected survival outcomes. "What is happening?" Moktharn demanded. "The trials are adapting to their response patterns," reported the chief technician. Their voice carries notes of awe. "Their willingness to sacrifice everything for each other is creating solution pathways that our models never predicted." "Override the adaptations," Moktharn commanded. "Force the fatal outcomes." "Sir," the technician replied quietly, "that would violate the sacred protocols of the trials. Once a solution pathway emerges, it must be allowed to complete." In the observation deck, Elder Vashonier's form had shifted to colors that hadn't been seen among her species for over 1,000 years. Shades associated with encountering the truly unprecedented. "These humans," she said slowly, "they don't just face death without fear, they transform it into something else entirely." The Velnash delegation's light patterns had synchronized into a harmonic frequency that their species reserved for witnessing transcendent events. The Krintol warriors had fallen to their knees in a display of respect that they showed only to the greatest heroes of their own kind. High Arbiter Moktharn stood alone in his authority, as even his own technicians began to question the trial's purpose. "This proves nothing," he declared, though his harmonic voice carried frequencies of desperation. "They've simply exploited flaws in our trial systems." "Or," Elder Vashonier replied, her ancient voice carrying the weight of millennia, "they've shown us flaws in our understanding of what makes a species truly advanced." Trial 5: Cultural Dissolution. The humans were exposed to psychic patterns designed to strip away their species' identity. leaving them with only individual consciousness untethered from cultural connections. Most species, when faced with the complete loss of their cultural framework, suffered psychological collapse within hours. Humans did something different. They recreated their culture from scratch. Dr. Blackwood began telling stories, not recorded histories, but the fundamental human stories that existed in every culture. Stories of heroes and villains, love and loss, triumph and tragedy. The others added their own memories, their own tales, their own understanding of what it meant to be human. Within hours they had reconstructed not just their own culture, but an enhanced version that incorporated everything they had learned about themselves during the trials. They had transformed cultural dissolution into cultural evolution. "This is impossible," Moktharn repeated, the phrase becoming his constant refrain. "No," Elder Vashonir replied, her colors shifting to shades of profound realization. "This is what we've forgotten. This is what we lost when we became civilized." Trial 6. Technological dependency removal. All advanced technology was stripped away, leaving the humans with only their biological capabilities and basic tools. Most galactic species, having evolved beyond dependence on their natural abilities, found themselves helpless. Humans began improving their situation immediately. Captain Rivera fashioned weapons from debris. Dr. Okonkwo created medical tools from raw materials. Dr. Tanaka built computational devices using principles that predate electronics. They didn't just survive the loss of technology. They demonstrated how technology could be rebuilt from first principles. "They're not dependent on their technology," observed a Yundar collective member. "Their technology is dependent on them." As Trial 6 concluded, something unprecedented occurred. Species representatives throughout the observation deck began requesting private audiences with the humans, not to gloat over their eventual failure, but to understand how they had achieved what seemed impossible. High Arbiter Moktharn realized with growing horror that his humiliation protocol had backfired completely. Instead of demonstrating human inferiority, the trials were revealing the limitations of galactic civilization itself. "One trial remains," he announced desperately. "Trial 7 will prove that humans are still primitive barbarians unworthy of galactic recognition." But Elder Vashonir was no longer listening to him. She was watching the humans prepare for their final challenge and seeing in them something that the galaxy had lost long ago. Something that perhaps could be found again. The stage was set for Trial 7, the ultimate test. And High Arbiter Moktharn was about to learn that some species were meant to break every record. Trial 7 was not held in a chamber or controlled environment. Instead, the humans found themselves aboard a massive vessel drifting in the void between galaxies. A ship that had been dead for over 10,000 years, its crew long since consumed by some cosmic catastrophe that had left only haunting echoes in its twisted corridors. "This is the Nethistel," Overseer Kriminath explained as the humans materialized in the derelict's central hub via matter transport. It was once the flagship of the Zindari Empire, a species that believed themselves the rightful rulers of the galaxy. They were removed for their arrogance. The ship stretched endlessly in all directions, its biomechanical architecture a fusion of technology and living tissue that had long since died. Twisted corridors led into darkness, while phantom lights flickered in systems that should have been powerless for millennia. The air was breathable but carried the metallic taste of ancient fear. "Your task is simple," Krimnath continued, his voice echoing through the dead ship's communications array. "Reach the vessel's core and activate the memorial beacon. You have 72 hours before your transport retrieval." What he didn't mention, what none of the trial observers knew, was that the Nethistel held secrets that could reshape galactic understanding of civilization itself. High Arbiter Moktharn watched from his command station as the humans began exploring the derelict vessel. "This trial will finally prove their barbaric nature," he announced to the assembled observers. "The Nethistel is haunted by the psychic echoes of the Zindari's final moments. Most species experience complete psychological breakdown within hours." But Elder Vashonir studied the human bio-readings with growing concern. Their stress levels are elevated, but stable. They're not exhibiting the terror response that other species demonstrate. "Because they haven't encountered the echoes yet," Mokan replied confidently. "Wait until they reach the crew quarters. Dr. Blackwood led the human team through the ship's twisted passages, his linguistic expertise allowing him to decipher the alien script that covered the walls. These aren't just labels, he realized. They're warnings. The Zindari were trying to tell someone what happened to them. Captain Rivera maintained point position, his military instincts on high alert as they navigated the dark corridors. Something's not right about this place. The damage patterns don't match any weapon signatures I recognize. Dr. Tanaka ran her scanner over the biomechanical walls, frowning at the readings. The ship's systems show massive trauma, but not from external forces. It's like the vessel tore itself apart from the inside. They found the first crew quarters 40 minutes into their exploration. The chambers were arranged in a pattern that suggested the Zindari were a hive mind species, with individual spaces connected by neural interfaces that would have allowed shared consciousness. But the interfaces had been deliberately severed, torn apart with such violence that the metal still showed stress fractures after 10 millennia. They cut themselves off from each other, Dr. Chen observed, studying the damaged neural connections. But why would a hive mind species destroy their most fundamental capability? The answer came as psychic echoes began manifesting around them. Ghostly impressions of the Zindari's final moments replaying in endless loops. Other species exposed to these psychic remnants experienced them as overwhelming terror. But humans perceived something different. They were afraid, Dr. Okonkwo whispered, watching a spectral Zindari frantically destroying connection cables. But not of death. They were afraid of what they might become. The humans pressed deeper into the ship, following a path that other species had never been able to complete. The psychic echoes grew stronger, but instead of breaking the human team, they provided crucial information about the Zindari's fate. In the observation stations, representatives from dozens of species watched in amazement as the humans progressed through areas that had driven previous trial participants to madness. The Velnash delegation's light patterns had synchronized into frequencies associated with witnessing the impossible. How are they maintaining psychological coherence? Demanded Moktharn. The psychic pressure in those sections should have incapacitated them hours ago. They're not fighting the echoes, reported a technician monitoring the human brain activity. They're interpreting them, processing them as information rather than experiencing them as trauma. Elder Vashnir's ancient form shifted to colors that indicated profound revelation. Of course. They come from a death world. They've evolved to process trauma as data, to learn from horror rather than be paralyzed by it. The breakthrough came when the humans reached the ship's central archives. Here, the psychic echoes were strongest, but they also carried the complete story of the Zindari's final days. Dr. Blackwood worked frantically to translate the alien data streams, while his teammates defended against the increasingly violent spectral manifestations. "I've got it," he announced suddenly. The Zindari weren't destroyed by an external force. They discovered something that made them realize their entire understanding of civilization was wrong. The archive data revealed the truth. The Galactic Trials weren't just a test for emerging species. They were a screening process designed to eliminate species that might threaten the existing galactic order. But the Zindari had discovered something even more disturbing. The species running the trials weren't the galaxy's original inhabitants. The Zeftari, the Velnash, the Krintol, they're all secondary civilizations. Dr. Blackwood read from the ancient records. The original species that built galactic civilization were systematically eliminated by those who came after. The trials are designed to prevent any species from growing powerful enough to uncover this truth. The implications were staggering. The entire galactic community was built on a foundation of genocide, with the current advanced species serving as guardians of a lie that had persisted for hundreds of thousands of years. But the Zindari had learned this truth too late. Their hive-mind nature made them incapable of keeping the secret, so they had chosen to destroy themselves rather than become complicit in the ongoing deception. In the observation decks, Elder Vashnir was accessing her own species' most ancient records, cross-referencing the human discoveries with data that had been classified for millennia. What she found confirmed humanity's revelations and revealed something even more disturbing. "Moktharn," she said quietly, her voice carrying frequencies of profound sorrow. "The humans are right. We're not the original galactic civilization. We're the inheritors of their murderers." High Arbiter Muktanamont voice shifted to frequencies of denial and rage. Impossible. Our records go back. Our records go back exactly as far as the first trials. The Schneer interrupted. Before that, there's nothing. We accepted the absence of earlier records as natural, but it's not. It's evidence of systematic data destruction. The humans had reached the ship's core, where the memorial beacon waited to be activated, but they now understood that activating it would transmit the Zindari's discoveries to every corner of the galaxy. A revelation that would shatter the existing order and expose the truth about galactic civilization's bloody foundations. We have a choice, Admiral Kane said quietly, studying the beacon's activation controls. We can complete the trial as designed, activate the beacon and return home, or we can broadcast what we've learned and change everything. The consequences could be catastrophic, Dr. Chen warned. Entire civilizations might collapse if this truth spreads. But living a lie is worse than facing a difficult truth, Captain Rivera replied. Humanity didn't come this far to participate in a cover-up. Dr. Blackwood placed his hand on the beacon's primary control. The Zindari died to preserve this truth. The least we can do is honor their sacrifice. As the beacon activated, it did more than transmit the Zindari's historical records. It also broadcast the humans' trial performances, showing the galaxy what a truly advanced species looked like. Not one that had achieved technological sophistication, but one that had maintained the essential qualities that made civilization worth preserving. The transmission spread across the galaxy at faster than light speeds, reaching every inhabited system simultaneously. On 1,000 worlds, species that had accepted their place in the galactic hierarchy suddenly questioned everything they had been taught about their own history. In the trial observation decks, chaos erupted as representatives from dozens of species began accessing their own classified archives, discovering evidence that confirmed the human revelations. The careful order that had maintained galactic stability for millennia began crumbling in real time. High Arbiter Moktharn watched his authority dissolve as species after species turned away from the trial protocols and began demanding answers about their true origins. This is exactly what the trials were designed to prevent, he said desperately. Chaos, revolution, the collapse of order. No, Elder Vashonir replied, her ancient form now radiating colors that indicated joy, an emotion her species hadn't experienced in hundreds of thousands of years. This is what the trials were designed to prevent us from becoming again. They were meant to keep us from remembering what we once were. The humans completed their return journey to the trial complex's docking bays, but they returned to a galaxy transformed. Species that had barely acknowledged each other's existence were forming alliances based on shared heritage. Civilizations that had maintained rigid hierarchies for millennia were experiencing democratic awakenings. The careful balance of power that had kept the galaxy stable was being replaced by something chaotic but authentic. You've destroyed everything, Mokatharn accused as the humans prepared to depart for Earth. The galaxy will tear itself apart without the trials to maintain order. Maybe, Dr. Blackwood admitted. But it will tear itself apart honestly, which is better than living a beautiful lie. As the UES Defiance departed the trial complex, it carried more than just humanity's representatives. Delegations from 17 species had requested passage to Earth, seeking to learn more about the civilization that had broken every record not through technological superiority, but through moral courage. The journey home took 3 weeks, during which the human representatives found themselves teaching their passengers about concepts that galactic civilization had forgotten. Sacrifice for strangers, cooperation without domination, progress through diversity rather than conformity. Your species has given us a gift, said Nethiara, a Velnash delegate whose light patterns had begun incorporating frequencies that her species hadn't used in millions of years. You've reminded us what we lost when we became advanced. But the greatest surprise awaited them at Earth. The transmission from the Nethystal had reached humanity's home system days before their return, and Earth's response had been immediate and unprecedented. Instead of preparing for invasion or diplomatic isolation, humanity had begun broadcasting its own cultural archives to the galaxy. Music, literature, philosophy and art that demonstrated what a Death World species could achieve when it chose creation over destruction. Ambassador Okafor met them at Luna Station, with news that redefined everything. 17 species have applied for cultural exchange programs. 43 worlds want to establish trade relationships based on your trial performance. And the Galactic Council? Well, there isn't one anymore. It's been replaced by something called the Interspecies Cooperative, and they want humanity to help write the new charter. Dr. Blackwood stared out at the approaching Earth, watching as ships from across the galaxy entered orbit around humanity's home world. "We came back expecting to be judged," he said quietly. "Instead, we've become teachers." The galaxy needed to remember what it meant to be truly alive, Captain Rivera observed. "Turns out you learn that best from a death world." 6 months later, the trial complex had been converted into the Galactic Memorial and Learning Center, dedicated to preserving the memory of the species that had been systematically eliminated during the millennia of galactic advancement. The trials themselves had been replaced by collaborative research projects where species worked together to solve problems that benefited everyone rather than competing for dominance. High Arbiter Muktharn had been given a choice: exile or redemption through service. He chose redemption, working alongside human educators to help other species understand the difference between advancement and evolution. His harmonic voice now carried frequencies of humility that his species had thought lost forever. Elder Vashanier had become the first director of historical recovery, leading teams of investigators who were gradually uncovering the true scope of the galaxy's forgotten civilizations. Each discovery revealed new depths to the tragedy that had shaped galactic development, but also new hope for what could be rebuilt. The humans had indeed broken every record, not through superior technology or greater intelligence, but by remembering something that the galaxy had forgotten: that true advancement meant becoming more compassionate, not more powerful. And as Earth became the unofficial capital of the new galactic community, humanity discovered that their greatest trial hadn't been the 7 challenges they had faced in the alien complex. Their greatest trial was yet to come, proving that a species from a death world could help create a galaxy worth living in. The trials had ended, but the real test had just begun. In the depths of space, monitoring stations that had watched for potential threats for millions of years began detecting something unprecedented: signals from galaxies beyond their own, carrying the echo of humanity's revolution. Other galactic communities trapped in their own cycles of stagnation and control were beginning to ask the same questions that humanity had forced their neighbors to confront. The revolution that had begun with 12 humans facing judgment was spreading beyond the boundaries of known space, carrying with it a simple but radical idea: that civilization's greatest achievement wasn't conquering the universe, but learning to live in it with dignity, courage, and hope. The galaxy would never be the same. And perhaps that was exactly what it needed.